A little over a week ago, I was up at Rick's Woodyard, and Kelly and the guys from Hammerhead Attachments were there with that big grapple that would block the firewood blocker, I think they call it. They would block up to a 30-inch log into 16-inch rounds, and they also had the box wedge on the skid steer splitter. The other thing they had that was pretty cool, and I didn't show a lot of it in the video, was they had a big conveyor table that would like bring the rounds that firewood blocker, once it blocked the round off of the log, it would bring those rounds up to the log splitter. And it's one of the things that caught my eye, but again, I didn't have a lot of time that day. I had to leave early, so it was something that I wanted to see a little bit more of. So they ended up leaving it up at Rick's Woodyard, and so I went up there the other day to check it out and get a better look at it, just to see how it operated and how it performed, bringing those rounds up to the log splitter. So one of the things that I really liked about it was the fact that you could potentially load this thing up with a whole bunch of rounds and have a good little session of splitting, you know, ahead of you. So for instance, in my last video when Amanda was out here bringing the rounds over to the log splitter, doing the easy job. So in a situation like that with a conveyor table like that, I would have been able to put quite a few of those rounds up there on that table and then just run that conveyor up to the Easton Made 37D here and right onto the splitter. So that's the thing that kind of caught my eye with that, is it would be cool to have something that I could put a whole bunch of rounds on, or even maybe, you know, you're in the same situation. You always get a bunch of rounds kind of scattered about, and then you either have someone out there bringing the rounds over to you as you run the splitter, or you are running and getting the round and bringing it over, or you're using a tractor with a bucket or a skid steer with a bucket, whatever. This table, I think, kind of solves that problem and is kind of like the missing link between the rounds on the ground and going through the splitter. So one of the nice things is if you have a conveyor with your log splitter, or you have a conveyor attached to your log splitter like the 37D is here, is that the conveyor takes the wood away after it is split. But the idea of a conveyor, beforehand bringing the rounds to you, like I said, that really kind of caught my eye and kind of grabbed my attention, because it would be, if a one-man operation, like sometimes I'm out here just by myself, if I could load up that big conveyor table with rounds, and then with, pushing a lever, advance those rounds up towards the splitter, I think it would be a big help. And I think they're onto something, and I know they're still working, fine-tuning that whole conveyor table thing, but I think it could be a valuable tool and a valuable piece of equipment to have in a firewood operation. So Rick did figure out if you hit that conveyor, it will advance pretty quick, and it will almost launch the round right onto the splitter, right in place to be split. But depending on which side of the splitter you were on, you might be able to also, kind of control just rolling the rounds off of the conveyor right onto the splitter. So like in my case, I would be running it on the same side as the conveyor. And the one thing I think it might need, and I'm sure Kelly and everyone up there at Hammerhead Attachments are probably looking into this and kind of developing it. But the one thing that would be kind of nice is to almost have like a little landing platform at the top that would kind of be like in the shape of like a Y, could kind of like funnel the rounds into the splitting chamber on the splitter. But again, it's just something that, depending on your setup, you might need to either customize it or build something to where the conveyor would bring the rounds up, and then you would just advance them onto the splitter. The nice thing is that it brings the rounds up, and that's the key word. Having those rounds up at waist level, so you don't have to bend over. I mean, that's the big advantage of a log lift, brings the round up. But with the log lift, it's usually only 1 or 2 rounds at a time. With that big conveyor table, like I said, I just think it'd be a huge advantage to be able to load that thing up with a whole bunch of rounds, split for however long it takes you, and then idle the splitter down, go gather up more rounds, put them on to the conveyor table. Or what we did up at Rick's when I was up there is he would go grab a log with the grapple, bring it over, and I would just buck the rounds right off the log and have them fall onto the conveyor table. Just like what they did with the firewood blocker on the skid steer. We were just doing it manually. So he would hold the log with the grapple, I'd take the saw, cut it, the round would fall on the table, we'd build a whole bunch up and split through them. But it is definitely something that's very cool, and definitely something that is getting me thinking, after the last video where I had Amanda out here bringing the rounds over just to kind of keep a nice flow going, what it would be like to kind of have that conveyor table do that job. I mean, you would still have to load the rounds onto it, but you could use the tractor, or you could take, you could get set up, you could stage your rounds, get them all loaded up ahead of time. Something like that, like I said, has got my gears turning of how I kind of was thinking like the old, when I was a kid growing up on the farm, it kind of reminded me of the old manure spreaders that my dad had. They'd have like a big conveyor chain like that, and it would just take the manure from the front of the spreader to the back, and then there'd just be a big set of wheels with teeth on them throwing the stuff all over the place. But it kind of reminded me of that. So let me know down in the comments what you think of this conveyor table. You think it would be handy in your wood yard? I'm thinking, for me, well, when Amanda's not around, to do the easy job of bringing the rounds up to the splitter, that thing would make it a pretty easy job.